So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jessica Rorson, and I'm working with the Indigenous Business Development Program and with Sage Hill Community Futures. And we are here today with Tahira, and we're going to be talking about banking for your small business. Before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge the land that we're currently on. So as we gather here today, we acknowledge we are on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. We pay our respects to the First Nation and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. So we're going to get started. Jenny from Sage Hill is just going to introduce herself, and then we will get started.
Good afternoon, everybody, and we're so happy that everybody could join us. My name is Jenny Glussman, and I work with the Sage Hill Community Futures Office, and we host we're part of the Indigenous Business Development Services, and we bring this series of workshops for small business owners or anyone that's even thinking about business. So we're excited to have everybody here today, and so we'll turn it over to our presenter for the day.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Tahira. I'm so happy to be here today, so thank you for having me. And I will share my screen and get into my presentation.
It's at 1:30 to 2:30.
Okay, can you all see the presentation view? Perfect. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about setting systems up in our business for financial success. So we will get into what this looks like. I know Jessica did a land acknowledgement, but what I'll add to that is I think it's especially important for a course like this as we talk about money, which is essentially the currency of capitalism. So I want to acknowledge that these systems were built on social injustice and unequal access to money and capital. I'm sure this is a group of individuals that believe in a more just society. So I'm to the choir here.
Sharing this on purpose.
But this could serve as extra motivation to keep and grow your money in your business so you can catalyze the change that is needed. And if everyone could just mute, but if you need to ask a question, please feel free to unmute yourself at any time and just jump in. It's a small group, so I'm okay with interruptions.
I am also watching the chat, that if anybody wants to drop a message in there, I'll let you know that if they're there as well.
Great, okay. So my name is Tahira, and I will be your facilitator for this workshop today. I'm a CPA. For the last 3 years, I've been supporting entrepreneurs and visionaries in managing their business finances and growing their profitability through financial strategy, part-time CFO services, monthly group coaching, and business tax services. I'm also part owner of the Well Collaborative, which is a network of women entrepreneurs for them to connect as they dream, grow, and scale their business. I just want to mention that this is a safe space to ask questions, especially when it comes to money. A lot of us don't have this baseline knowledge, but feel like we should have this baseline knowledge. So I'm just here to tell you that I don't expect any baseline knowledge. And if you have a question in your head, chances are like 10 other people are thinking the same thing. So please just speak up and ask your questions. Okay, so I wanted to start with this quote that I'm really loving at the moment. I heard it in a Brené Brown podcast, and it's by James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits. And he says, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fail to the level of our systems. And I think this is so relevant as we're talking about managing our finances in our business, right? Because we probably have financial goals. And in order to get them, we really need to have good systems in place to allow us to reach these goals. So I haven't read the book. I've heard great things. It's sitting on my bookshelf and I will read it one day. But if you also don't have the time, there's a really great podcast on the Brené Brown Unlocking Us podcast on Spotify, where she interviews James Clear and they talk about atomic habits and how to change habits and think about habits in a new way. Okay, so yeah, today I know Jessica asked me to talk about kind of some basics when it comes to business finances and how do we actually pay ourselves. But what I wanted to talk about is financial systems, because I think it's actually the foundational step in order for us to pay ourselves and like reap the rewards from our business. So I'm going to lay out some steps and some tools and like a list of things that you can do to get started today. Okay, so here are just a list of questions that I want everyone to just reflect on. So things like, how much money did I make in sales last month? What were my total expenses for the month? How much cash did I generate for my business this month? How much can I keep from the excess cash in my business? So these are great questions that would be great to know. And if we don't have the right, this is all data, right? Data from money coming in and out. And if we don't have a place to store all this data and turn that data into information, we won't know the answers. We can't do all this mental math in our head.
Should your screen be changing?
Oh,
Yeah,
I see anything different.
I was just going to ask the same question. I'm not sure if we're seeing the slides.
do you see it now?
Now we
Yeah.
do. We just
Okay.
saw your opening slide before.
Oh, okay. So is that okay?
There you go.
So these were okay. This is everything I passed.
Sorry, I should have clued in sooner. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Kara. Okay, so yeah, that's me. That's land acknowledgement. Now it's gone back for some reason. Oh, tech.
I was told once that every Zoom meeting will have some little glitch.
Right. I know what I'm gonna do. Okay. I'm gonna move this here. Can you just tell me if it's changed now?
We have the questions on. How much did I make in sales last month?
Okay, so let's land here. This is where I was. So how much did so these are some questions. How much did I make in sales last month? Or, you can take any time period. Where are my total expenses? How much cash did I generate for my business? And how much, and then the ultimate question is, how much cash can I keep from any excess cash I generated in my business, right? This is what we want to know. But in order to do this, we need to have a place to store this data and then have a system to look at the data and process the data so that we can treat our business as truly a business that's generating profits, and we're getting better at using our resources efficiently to generate more profits. Essentially, that's the goal of most businesses. And so I just wanted to put these here because these are great questions and just gets you to think, oh, I don't know the answer to that question. And so then the gap might be that you might not have the systems in place to be able to capture this information. Okay. Okay, so today some of the things we're going to talk about and address are.
Hey, Kira, it didn't slide over to the next slide.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and just move into, because I'm in this presenter mode and it's not working. So I'm just going to simplify. Oh, no. Can you see the presenter screen now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so some of the things we're going to talk about today, what problems will we solve? How do we organize our receipts? I know a very common way to keep these receipts is in a shoebox, but we don't want to do that. Tracking our finances. So we really know it's more than just seeing how much is left in your bank account at the end of the day, but how much did you make? How profitable is your business? Tracking your sales tax. So if you're collecting sales tax, which everyone has to do at some point based on what you're selling, but how much do I owe the tax man at any one point? And just create more headspace. Sometimes we keep a lot of this information and math in our head, and if we just have a place to put it and that's automatically keeping track of it, we don't have to use that mental capacity in our brain. We can use that space to think more about our business. Okay, so I want us to just really start from the beginning. So where is the cash coming from in our business? So we sell products, we sell services, we collect sales tax. Another area we could generate cash is if we sell an asset in our business, or financing. So if we get a loan from the bank, if we sell some equity, if we get some grants, those are all financing areas. So I just wanted to ground in where cash comes in. And then next is where cash goes out of our business. So we buy things and we might resell. We might have business expenses like rent or our bookkeepers. We might buy assets. So we might buy equipment. We might buy property. And then we might have to repay some of our financing. So if we have a loan, we might be making payments every month on those loans. So those are some of the areas where cash goes out of our business. And then paying taxes, obviously, which is not on this list, but very important. So then I wanted to talk about bookkeeping, because bookkeeping is the place where this is all going to come together. So it's where we record all the transactions. It's how we classify all the transactions, tell them what the transaction relates to, and how we organize so we can have all the things that are the same in different buckets. So then and organizing is really the key to turning all this data into information. And that information is going to serve us and help us make decisions in our business. And then it's going to help us pay ourselves in our business. So I wanted to talk about bookkeeping software. So I think it's really important to use software and the latest technology when it comes to bookkeeping, because it can really save time and it can just really do some more advanced data processing. So it'll help us stay organized. It'll help us stay compliant. I know a lot of time can be spent stressing on if I'm doing the right thing in terms of taxes. And then also just allow us to see at any one point how much might be owed in sales taxes. And then really the more advanced stuff is it can tell us how much money are we making. We can pull information like how much sales did I make last month? Those questions I posed, how much sales did I make last year? And then so if you want to try and figure out how to increase that, you might have some data to start with. And then the bookkeeping software can help you decide how much money you can pay yourself. So if you've seen all your income, you've seen all your expenses, you know what's left, and that might be able to help you decide how much money you can draw from that. Okay, so I've outlined the 5 steps, basic steps for financial success. So what are the basic things we need to do in our business to really allow us to have those systems in place to then grow our profitability? So number 1, whether as you're a sole prop or a corporation, it's good practice either way to separate your bank account and credit card for your business. Just so then it's easier to then do this bookkeeping when things are just separated, other than trying to go into your bank account and then manually have to separate personal transactions from business transactions. So that's the number 1 key thing, is have a separate bank account. Then the second one is use a cloud booking software. So I'll go into recommended some, but that's number 2. Having a system for your sales. So something that just happens on its own, where you can have as little intervention as needed, that it's happening, the sales are coming in, the data is coming into your bookkeeping software, and everything is happening as much as possible behind the scenes, so that data is being generated without you having to do too much. And then again, the same thing, having a system for your business expenses. So everything's being caught, all the data is being tracked in some sort of as automated as possible again. And then the fifth key thing that's like the best practice, the foundational best practice in bookkeeping and is reconciling your cash and credit cards on a monthly basis. And so what does that mean? That means that we get a bank statement that tells us at the end of the month what the balance is on our in our bank account, and we want to match that to the balance in our bookkeeping software. That's going to tell us that we've accounted for everything that's come in and out of the month. And so these are the basic steps, but you don't necessarily have to do them. It is perfectly okay to have a bookkeeper, just making sure that so you don't have to be the one that's taking care of it, but you just want to make sure that it's being taken care of in your business. So if you have a bookkeeper, they will most likely do the reconciliations on a monthly basis. I mean, they should be doing, and then they might be managing the system for the sales and the expenses and all the transactions. But you need to be the one to put these systems in place for your business. Are there any questions yet? Okay, I'll go on. Okay, so let's talk a little about choosing a cloud bookkeeping software. So I really recommend the cloud bookkeeping software just because now you can access it with any laptop. It doesn't have to be sitting on one hard drive. It's really like the future of bookkeeping. QuickBooks Online is the most popular one. I use it most of the time. I use it for myself. I use it for most of my clients, but it is more expensive. The packages start at around $40 a month. So it's not necessarily where you have to start. And Xero is probably similar to QuickBooks, like their main competitor. And again, their standard packages start at $40 a month. If you're small business and just starting out and you have a few transactions and you just want to send a few invoices at the end of every month and you have maybe a few expenses that you just want to recognize, there are some free options. So Wave and FreshBooks are two bookkeeping softwares. They're cloud-based and their basic packages are free, and then you can pay for any add-ons. So that would be a good place to start if you're just figuring it out. And then you don't necessarily ever have to be married to one software. If you're growing and you're using Wave, the free account, there are ways that you can then migrate into QuickBooks when it comes the time that you think it's worth it to spend that $40 a month. So you can start with a free one and then upgrade as your needs develop. Okay, and so let's talk about setting up a sales system. So choosing a sales system based on the frequency, the volume, and the nature of your sales. So if you have a service-based business with low volumes, if you're just sending out maybe 5 invoices a month, you can just invoice directly from your bookkeeping software. And you might still be at the point where you physically go into your bookkeeping software, you send the invoices. So the great thing about bookkeeping softwares is you can make your invoices directly in the bookkeeping software. They will email them to your client. So then there's no having to take those Word documents, or if you make invoices in Word and put them into your bookkeeping software, it'll just then it'll summarize all your income based on those invoices you've created. If you use another system, so if you're selling things, you're maybe using like Shopify, all your transactions are going in Shopify, find out how you can transfer that data to your bookkeeping software. So a lot of these systems talk to another, or there's like third-party apps that are built to send information from one system to the other. But that will just help you, because if say you're selling something on Shopify and there's high volumes, you don't want to have to manually input that data into the bookkeeping software every month. You just want to find a way that it automatically gets there. So all your sales data is sitting in your bookkeeping software, and your bookkeeping software is where the container where everything will meet. You might have different software for your expenses and your income, but the bookkeeping software, it's going to all come together and you can like look at the data all together. And then the same thing about expense system. So this is really replacing your shoebox with a system that you don't get to the end of the year and you're thinking, oh my God, it's tax time. I need to like give this shoebox to my accountant. This is really replacing that system where you have a system in place so that every month you can do a little bit, or you can do things as you get receipts and they're all stored right away. And so there's no like stress around tax time. And then also you can get some information, because if we're keeping all those receipts in a shoebox all year long, how are we ever going to know throughout the year how much money we're spending, right? And that's a really key part of our business, is knowing how much we've spent, comparing that against how much money that's come in, and then that's going to tell us how much money is left over and how much we can take out and pay ourselves from our business. So digitizing receipts is a great idea. There's some apps now that you can take a picture with your phone and use, and in the app, you can have the app on your phone. I use a system called HubDoc. So HubDoc is like a storing system. I'll keep all my receipts in there. And once you've digitized your receipts and they're sitting on a cloud somewhere, you don't have to keep the paper copy. So then you can get rid of the paper. And then HubDoc is really cool because and HubDoc, and there's some other ones. I think there's Receipt Bank. They actually talk to QuickBooks. So your bookkeeper or yourself, you can just send the expenses from HubDoc to QuickBooks, and then they're in there and they're categorized. So yeah, transfer receipts to your bookkeeping software. QuickBooks, you can actually just do it through QuickBooks too. They now have an interface where you can use their app to take the pictures and then get it into QuickBooks. And then categorizing these receipts ongoing and not waiting till categorizing ongoing on a monthly basis is really important, so that then in your bookkeeping software, if you want to pull a report of all your expenses, it's up to date and you can then do that. Okay, so these are the monthly bookkeeping duties. It should be done on every month. And again, like I said, you don't necessarily have to be doing them, just making sure that they're done every month so that you can pull information you need. So entering all sales, if you're not using your bookkeeping software to create your invoices, then you need to get all your sales into your bookkeeping software. You need to get all your expenses into your bookkeeping software and categorize them, and also for sales and expenses. You're also recording what sales tax you paid and what sales tax you collected. Recording any other cash transactions. So you might, if you took cash out from the ATM, or if you send an e-transfer, just recording those in your bookkeeping software and categorize them based on what the money was spent on, or if you've collected cash from sales, making sure your bookkeeping system knows about those cash sales as well. And then reconciling your bank and credit card statements. So that's, again, like I said, the check that assures you that all the transactions that have gone in and out on a monthly basis have been captured in your bookkeeping software. And then filing and remitting sales taxes as required. So based on your business, this might be monthly, quarterly, or annually. And your bookkeeper can support you with getting all your sales tax filings ready. Okay, so that was what I wanted to talk about in financial systems, but I'd love to take some time to hear from everyone, some questions, or kind of maybe even for a small group where you are, and if this is too basic and you have other questions, yeah, why don't we use the next 10-15 minutes for some questions?
Are there any banks that you found are better for small businesses than other ones?
The credit unions, I think, are quite good. I think they're made and they're more friendly for small businesses. I actually switched from TD to a credit union just because I was tired of paying a monthly fee, and then I switched to Innovation Credit Union because if you keep a balance of 7,000, there's no fees, and I really like that. So yeah, just find out what your options are and find out where you can pay the lowest amount of fees, because those fees, like they say, it's $20 a month, but those can really add up over a year.
Okay.
We do have a question in the chat. Just starting out, wants to know about e-commerce when setting up a website to take sales. Does QuickBooks Online when sending invoices also take the payments?
You can set QuickBooks does have a payment feature. So instead of using like Stripe or Square, you can send an invoice and then take payment directly from QuickBooks. If you're using an e-commerce platform for taking sales, then you probably will connect it to like Stripe or Square, and then you'll just need a system to get probably the transactions from Stripe or Square into your QuickBooks. So those systems aren't that great at talking to each other right now, but there's like an app that I use. Sometimes it's called Cinder. I'll just write it in the chat, Cinder app. And that's the only one I know of where it allows the two systems to talk to each other. So you can download all your transactions from Stripe or Square and then send them into QuickBooks as sales invoices.
There was a second part to that question. What are the best e-commerce sites to use?
I'm not a huge expert on this, but from what I hear, I know Shopify and Squarespace are probably the two most common ones. Squarespace has an e-commerce function too. Yeah, those are probably the most common ones. I don't know of any smaller ones. But if there's, it kind of depends on what you're selling. If you're selling a tangible thing, I think Squarespace and Shopify. If you're selling like a ticket or a service, there's probably like a bunch of other platforms you could use. Like there's Thrivecart, there's Eventbrite off the top of my head that I can think of.
I have a question, and it has to do with, and this might not be the place. I was just curious. So if you have a home-based business, can you put your bills, like your utility bills, like in your business name, and then it can be a business expense? Is it better to do it that way versus just like a working from home business expense?
Yeah, I think it's better to have them in your, because having them personally in your personal name, because how the CRA allows you to deduct those personal expense, it's on an allocation basis. So if they said, if you have a home-based business, first of all, they say you have to have like a separate and dedicated area in your home for that business. And then what you can do is you can summarize all your expenses, like your rent, your mortgage interest, your utilities, your insurance for the year. And then what you would do is you allocate a percentage of that to the square footage of that office space compared to your whole house. Okay. So it would make sense to hold them personally and then take a chunk off for your when you're filing your taxes.
Okay. I have another question.
Yes.
If you don't own a home, let's say you're not on the mortgage of a home, but that's where you live and that's where you're running your business out of. Can you bill out rent?
Yep. Rent is the same thing that, like when I mentioned that allocation, it could be your monthly rent. And then part of it, like say 25% is your office in your home, then you use 25% as a business, a home office business expense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
We have another one. Is it okay to use Excel to track all financing when you're starting out?
Um,
I was going to
sorry.
interrupt there. I know in our, like with the community futures, we start lots of really small businesses that don't, and lots don't have computers or they're not computer literate. Lots do start out maybe with just even a journal book or an Excel spreadsheet. As long as they're keeping track, that's the big thing, right?
Yeah, and I would say Excel over anything else, because then at least if you could maybe, you can do math in Excel, so you can add things up rather than like writing things down, you still have to physically add. So yeah, that's perfectly fine. I think you can, as long as you can organize and still use that data. And then when it gets to the point where you think this Excel spreadsheet is too cumbersome, then it's probably time to move to a bookkeeping software. Some of the other, like the newer features that are coming out with QuickBooks are things like they're even trying to project your cash flow. So they're like running your data of historically how much cash has been coming in, how much cash has been going out, and trying to tell you what your cash is going to look like for the next few months, right? Those are the things that you're going to have roadblocks with if you're writing things down, you're doing things in Excel. It's going to be really hard to predict how much cash you're going to have in the future. And that becomes really important when you're growing a business.
The question is QuickBooks and other software easy to use and learn? I know personally QuickBooks, I had never used it till my husband put it into our business. I learned it very easy. Lots of very good online resources too. I think it's very user friendly.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'm glad you said that, because I'm an accountant, so I have this ingrained bias because I'm used to those things. So but there's tons of resources, like they have tutorials on how to do everything. There's communities, there's people that like have their own YouTube videos on how to do anything and everything in QuickBooks. And it is meant to be just really user friendly.
And it can be right from very simple to very complex. Like we own a lumber yard and my husband has his whole inventory in it. We all actually use ours as a point of sale as well, where I know lots don't, but we actually use ours as point of sale. So it is very, very easy to use.
Yeah, and then I think where the more complicated things, that's where maybe you might see your accountant when you're filing your taxes, and then they can maybe help you correct anything that you may have done wrong.
Are the online cloud-based bookkeeping safe? And can you download your data as a backup on your computer?
Yeah, they are safe, because like even QuickBooks, it talks to your bank. So you can hook up your bank account with QuickBooks so that all your bank transactions, so it's very secure, right? They hold your personal data. And yes, you can I have never done it, but you could always download a backup if you wanted to be safe. That's possible. I know it's tax season, or what's on people's minds?
I'll ask a question. I don't know if this is a question that we always get in our office. How to keep track of my vehicle mileage? Can I charge it? How do I do it? That's probably the number one question in our office.
No, that's a great question. So the CRA has a set mileage rate. So if you're using this is most likely you're using your personal car for business travel. So what they do is you have to keep a log of the mileage used for business trips. There's actually some great apps that can do this for you. There's one called Mile IQ. I'll just write it here. And it's really cool. I think there's probably some other apps like this, but essentially if you have your phone on you, it's keeping track of every trip you do in your car. And then you can swipe right or left for depending on if so tell it which ones are personal trips, which are business trips. You can like tell it that any of these same trips are always business, and then it'll give you reports, and then you can use those in your bookkeeping software. But so for mileage, you're allocating every mile CRA has a rate. I think it's like 55 cents on the first 5,000 kilometers. And then something lower after that. And then, if you're going on a business trip and you filled your car with fuel and all of that fuel was used, you can definitely expense all that fuel. And then you can also expense any maintenance on the proportion of business versus personal trips you've done in a year with your car.
I see there's a question in the chat, which I think came about the same time I was. It says, can you explain the automotive as left as part of the business books? How does mileage tracking work if only use the auto part-time for biz? How do you calculate upkeep like insurance for part-time auto use? So you answered some of that, but can you do your insurance?
Yep, you can do your insurance, and it'll all have to be based on having a record of the mileage you've used for business, like, and then mileage you've used total in the year. So it's like maybe taking a picture of your odometer at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, saying, okay, this X amount was business, that comes up to 24%. And then you can allocate that to all those car expenses like insurance and maintenance.
The next question, can we have the list of softwares in our emails?
Sure.
Yep, Jessica, I can work with you after to.
Awesome.
Okay.
Great.
And how does that look on a tax return? I think we're back. This is Kate's question. It's back to where she was the one asking about the automotive expenses.
Oh yeah, there's a specific, I don't know the number of the form, but there's a specific tax form as a sole proprietor for
Someone
business.
just put in here
Oh.
T2125. I don't know if that's right.
That's the income statement. I don't know if that has, maybe that is where you put in the vehicle expenses here, but there's a specific area where you put in all your vehicle expenses.
If you use any of those programs, they usually have a spot. I was just trying to think of the program I used last year.
Oh, like TurboTax. Yeah, they'll tell you.
Yeah, there's TurboTax and like there's a bunch of free ones. I used a free one.
Okay.
Me and my mom have both used it for years, but yeah, they just like fill in the blanks and answer the questions, and it asks you stuff like that for self-employed.
I know we tell lots of clients too, just to throw a book in their console, and every time you go on a business trip, write the date and how many kilometers. And then at the end of the year, you add it up and then you get that percentage. Try to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I second that Mile IQ. It was recommended to me and I just downloaded it a few days ago for my deliveries in the city. So
Nice.
it's pretty easy to use.
Can you explain to Hira, so you have a business and you have it registered, you have a separate bank account, you generate, a significant amount of money. So let's say you're paying taxes, you're paying GST. But then you also have to do your personal income tax. Can you explain that to me?
So okay, if you register a business, you have two options, right? You have most people start out as sole proprietors. So that's when there's really no legal separation between you and your business. And in that case, you report all your income and expenses in your personal tax return as like a self-employed person. And also in that case, there's no separation between your business assets and your personal assets. So you can take cash out and you don't have to really keep track of the cash coming out of your business and you using personally, right? Because it's all in the same, think of it as one pot.
Yeah.
Then you might say, okay, I think it's time to incorporate. In the two reasons for incorporating, there might be some tax advantages of incorporating, but also you might want that legal separation of your business if you're maybe doing something like, if you're doing something in the medical field where you might be liable, if there's some lawsuits that can come against you, if someone sues you, you don't want them to be able to come after your personal assets. So your corporation is a separate legal entity. if someone sues your corporation, your personal assets are not liable. And in that case, that's where you would then file a corporation tax return. So that's a T2 corporate tax return. And then you also have to file your T1 tax return. And what will show up in your T1 is the money that came out of your corporation and went to you personally. And that could either be through a salary, like you're on payroll as an employee and your corporation pays you. Or the second option is you pay because you're the sole, if you're the sole shareholder, or there are other shareholders involved, they all receive a dividend from any profit that was generated in the business. And those have different tax implications, and they're taxed differently.
Okay.
I know from the sole proprietor, there's actually in your income tax return, there's a list of business activity, and it'll show all those business expenses that she was talking about. It lists those in there. So I know here at Sage Hill, if we're ever looking for somebody for their income and expenses from their business and their sole proprietor, we actually pull that right out of their tax return.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions? We've been lots of good ones. I think that's so far. That seems like everything for now that everybody's got. The big thing, and I know, and you said it's keeping records. It is so helpful for making any kind of decisions, whether paying yourself, can I buy that piece of equipment? Can I afford that inventory? And we say that in our office probably 10 times a day. If you don't have the books or that kept track of it, it's hard to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Do you have a recommendation, Tahira, in terms of like, so you're earning some dollars? You know, I think people often will get into trouble because then they don't save any of that. They just spend it all.
So a great rule of thumb is anything that comes in, if you put 10% of it away, and 10% should cover your corporation or personal taxes and your sales taxes. And so if every month, whatever sales come in, you say, what's 10%? So if $100 came in, you put $10 in a savings account. And then when it comes, because we know that like taxes are done once a year and people panic because they're like, $20,000, I don't have $20,000 in my account, but really it's saving that money on a monthly basis will really set you up for being ready for those taxes. And then you can also pay taxes in installments, right? And the CRA will make you, once you've reported above a certain threshold in taxes, I think it's like 3,000 on personal taxes, that you'll have to just put that away regularly. So yeah, having a system in place for that can help a lot. And then you can take money, then you're not saying, oh, I can't pay myself because I don't know how much taxes are going to be. You take that money out on a monthly basis and you look at all your expenses, and then what's left, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to take half of this out and leave half of it to cover my ongoing expenses or to reinvest in my business.
So even if your business has its own separate business name, you have a bank account set up for your business, that is still considered a sole proprietorship, and it's still, you're just doing your income tax under you?
Yeah, but yeah, so even if you don't, it's not legally required for when you're a corporation, you're meant to have a separate business account for your corporation. When you're sole proprietor, it's not legally required, but it's good practice to do that so that everything is separate and you can then keep track and then understand your business activities better.
I do have one more question. It says, do you have to pay yourself? Is it best to do a draw or can you just leave it in your account?
Yeah, you don't have to, but most of us are working so that we can have this money. So it's totally a choice. The other thing is, you might want to, if you're a corporation and you're just keeping all the cash you generate, like you're making a lot of money and you're keeping it in like a cash account in your corporation. Again, if you're in maybe some sort of business where someone could sue you, all that cash that's in your bank account under your corporation is like part of the money they could come after. So moving that is a good idea too, whether you then set up a holding company that holds the investments or paying yourself, just so that you kind of want to keep that business lean so that if someone sues you, there's not much they can potentially get from a settlement. And yeah, I mean, it's up to you what you want to do with that money, just finding ways to invest it to get a return. So if it's reinvesting in your business, then yeah, that makes sense.
Another question do you need to issue a T4 to yourself if you take a monthly draw?
So can you specify, are you incorporated or a sole proprietor?
Sole prop.
Okay, you don't necessarily have to. It can just be shareholders' drawings from, you don't have to. The reason why you might want to take it as a salary is then because if you're drawing it as a salary, then you're paying into CPP and EI. And if those things are important for you because you might want to use those benefits in the future, then you might want to pay yourself a salary to get those benefits.
Okay, David has a question. What happens when you want to do an MSB and banks do not want to open bank accounts for your business? Do you advise that we register a different company for expenses, or what do we do?
What's an MSB?
Oh, money service biz, a money service biz.
I don't know much enough about that to be able to answer that question. Oh, like transferring cash.
Western Union.
Yeah, I don't want to give any advice. I'm also
Basically,
I have to I'm a member of the CPA, so I have to
but
give
it says
it's not evading tax.
yeah, but basically, how do we record our expenses?
Well, so if you can always do a transfer between the shareholder and the business. So it doesn't have to be that if the expense is related to the business, but it comes out of your like personal bank account, it can still be an expense for the business and you're recording it as transfer between your shareholder account. Maybe that will help you.
Well, with that, I think we've answered a whole lot of questions. Unless somebody has something else, I just like to thank everybody for joining in today, and hopefully we've, supplied, given some information around that horrid, bank accounts and keeping track of all your expenses and your income. I know in our office, we spend hours with our clients making sure that they're doing that because it can tell you so much. And help, and the idea of doing it monthly, we can't stress that enough because it can be overwhelming. Because we always say, as a business owner, you're good at what you do. You're good at the doing. This is a whole new world of the expenses and the income and keeping track of it. But in the end, it can be so beneficial to your business.
So what I'll do is I will get a list of some of these different software programs and apps that Tahira was speaking about, and I will email them out to the group. And yeah, that's great. Thank you, Tahira. That was very
Great.
good.
Thank you for having me, and good luck everyone with your businesses and with tax season. I can drop my email address in the chat too. And Jessica, if you want to send it out after. And if
I will,
anyone
sure.
has questions, feel free to reach
Yeah.
out.
And I
Oh.
can't remember off the top of my head, we're back in 2 weeks with
We are doing a Instagram.
Instagram. Yes. So Instagram for your business. So feel free to look us up on Eventbrite or on our Facebook page and join us for that one. So have a
Super.
great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.